Hey everybody, this is Andy Bennett with the CSS News Civil War Interpretive Center. I'm here at Governor Charles B. Aycock birthplace with video 4 in my series, Cultural Influences on Southern Cuisine. In this video, we'll be talking about the British Isles' contribution to Southern cuisine. Depending on what time period in our history, depends on where in the British Isles those settlers are from. In the early time period of colonialization of North America, around Jamestown, a lot of those British settlers are coming from southern England. By the time of the settlement of North Carolina, we have Scottish Highlanders or Scotch-Irish folks that have been forced out of the Scottish Highlands during the Jacobean Revolt in the early 1700s. They settled in the Cape Fear River area and eventually up into the mountains of North Carolina. Those Brits and Scots from the border region settle in eastern North Carolina and into the Piedmont. My family connection to this is we're Broder Scots that settled in what is now Alamance and Caswell counties on my mother's side. The food contributions are many, but we'll go over some right quick. Most of the food that the border Scots and British would eat, a lot of what we consider poor people's food, porridges and gruels made of oatmeal. Oats don't really grow that well in the South, so they're going to adapt the corn and start eating grits and corn gruel and things like that. They also ate a lot of greens, wild greens, whether it's watercress or different other things. There also were used to cabbage and turnip greens and collards, so stewing them down is something that we shared, that both the enslaved Africans and the border Scots and British share as a culinary tradition. That's why one reason it's so entrenched in our Southern culture is those two groups both shared that common thing. Some of the other things that are common are hard breads. One of them, the British call it a scone and we call it a biscuit. Yeah, they get old biscuit and gravy or ham biscuit. That's our contribution from the British Isles. One of the other things is meat pies. We enjoy a good chicken pot pie nowadays, but early pies were just meat pies, whether they're hand pies or pies in a pan. They usually just have meat and herbs and things in them, and that's what we're going to cover today. That's the recipe I'm going to talk about today. You would have cooked these in a Dutch oven with coals on the bottom, coals on the top to bake. And here we go. We have a nice meat pie. This version, this recipe is one I adapted from a recipe. The recipe I originally used is from Tunis Campbell Sr. He was a free man of color born in New Jersey. He took up, his daddy was a blacksmith and he didn't want to do that, so he ended up taking up the occupation of head waiter and eventually into keeping an inn or hotel. And in 1848, he wrote the book Hotel Keepers, Head Waiters, and Housekeepers Guide. In that book, he has a recipe for veal pie. In that recipe, he describes laying out a crust, taking fillets of beef, laying it in the crust. Those need to be coated with sweet and savory herbs. He doesn't tell us what kind, just whatever mix you want to put in there. And he's sealing that up with a crust and cooking it. And then once he says it's cold, he's going to pour clarified butter in it and then serve. So you can have beef, you're going to have a little beef broth cooked into the crust and butter. The version I've made here is a little more easy to do at home, a little easier for the share with your family. That's where you just dice up the beef into dice-sized cubes. You mix that same blend of sweet and savory herbs, a little flour, a little water to bind that all together. You cover it with a top crust. And you bake it like you bake any pie, about 350, 375 for 45 minutes to an hour. It's going to take some while for all that moisture to cook and set up in this recipe. Hope you're enjoying these videos and learning something from them. Join me next time for our next video where we're talking about the German and Swiss contributions to our culinary cuisine in the South. As always, check our videos on CSS News Civil War Interpreter Center on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.